With the Clash now in the books, LA having filled up the Coliseum pretty darn well and now cleared it out, tearing down the track itself, I really want to talk about what we saw yesterday. I'm recording this at about 1 a.m. Central Time. I needed time to process the spectacle, really, that I saw. The spectacle we all saw. Now, I'm going to go over the good, the bad, the ugly, the whatever you want to describe of the Clash. I think there was plenty of good. There was stuff to be improved on. But I will say from the get-go of this video, overall, this was a just giant success for NASCAR. I won't say that it is an absolute perfect success. Like I said, there is plenty that can be improved upon. There is plenty that Fox can do better, NASCAR can do better, and just in general, there's things that can be fine-tuned over time. But first off, let's just get right into the racing. I know that was sort of the backdrop of what this event was for the most part on TV, but as for us NASCAR fans, and those of you who are new NASCAR fans who've been brought in by this, I think we should focus on the racing. Right away, I'm just going to say, I love this. I love the fact that you had the same mentality of a lot of short track, quarter-mile track racing that we see across the country at a local level. But what I'm going to say is that there was plenty of beating and banging. There was plenty of great racing. And I'll tell you this right now, this showed in a lot of ways, one, who is a better short track racer, but two, when it comes to who could keep control of their cars, who could take care of their equipment, it showed who in a lot of ways were more talented and reserved drivers for when it mattered. You saw the best of the best going out there and leading a lot of this race. You saw guys that everyone talks about having a ton of talent go out there and do really well. And you saw others who, while not bad, struggled compared to these drivers. Now, there's a few people who really stole the show in the heats. I will say right now that Austin Cindric and Ty Dillon were weapons out there. I am kind of thinking that they took Ty Dillon out of the main event, not because he broke any rules per se, or egregiously at least, but more just because it was for his own safety, seeing how he ran over pretty much everybody around him. Now, I will say this. One thing that I loved about it is that nobody really was safe except Kyle Larson going in. The highest person left in points, depending on which way any of the heats went, was in, so you knew that Larson would be in, but you didn't know about pretty much anybody else in the field. So when Kurt Busch and Brad Keselowski, two former champions, didn't make the race itself, I thought that was awesome. You see, Kurt Busch and especially Brad Keselowski, while big drivers in the sport itself, are not drivers that people outside of the sport, which are the ones who were meant to be brought in by this race, are going to know of. But when they hear that two past champions couldn't make this race, it really pushes the narrative that NASCAR wants to really spread of parity and just of no one being safe when it comes to getting in or getting kicked out of this race. And that right there is extremely important when it comes to the way that NASCAR can really push this race. And I really hope NASCAR just bucks up, has the cojones to do this year over year, because having that where no one really is ever safe would be the perfect selling point for this. You have to basically put your effort forth the entire time, depending on who you are, really. Now, I will say this with the racing. The attrition issues are something that we should expect with a new car, but because of the supply chain shortage, is kind of worrying. We saw a lot of drivers have problems, whether it be with shifting issues or overheating, and looking at the fact that this race was a 150-lap race on a quarter-mile track, meaning that this is well under 100 miles in total for a race, even if you add in the different heats, is a little disconcerting. Now, I don't think that we're going to have the same shifting problems that a lot of drivers had at Daytona, but overheating issues has always been a big trouble in the draft. So this is something that I really hope that if they can find out what went wrong, or at least partly what went wrong, they can rectify before the 500. Because let's be real, we probably don't want that to be a giant attrition race. This is something that should be expected. It's just that with the supply chain shortage and the shortage of cars for a lot of these teams, this could add up very quickly and be very detrimental. So I want to say that right there. Now, in the main event, there were two really big issues between drivers. One was between Ryan Blaney and Eric Jones, where Jones hit the back of Blaney because there's a big stack up into the corner. And Blaney pretty much lost. He ended up being pretty much out of the race. Yes, he came back out 2 laps down, but it was pretty much over. And then, of course, there was Kyle Larson versus Justin Haley, where Haley kind of got sent into Larson. And in an uncharacteristically angry way, Larson pretty much just junked Justin Haley for really just short track racing. I gotta say, I was really surprised by that. But up front, there were really 3 guys that dominated up front and were the cars to beat. There was Tyler Reddick, who ended up being one of those drivers taken out by the attrition issues. And then there was Kyle Busch, who I would say was the dominant car of the day until the last run, where Joey Logano really got the edge on him. Now, I talked a bit about the broadcast, and I will say this. The broadcast seemed to be very focused on the spectacle of everything going on, which did help. This race had the atmosphere of a very fun event, and in a lot of ways, when it came to just the energy that was being shown on the broadcast, kind of reminded me of old school NASCAR races. I know I say that, and a lot of other people say that a lot, but it did remind me of when NASCAR really was happening, really was the top motorsport industry in America to watch. I'm not saying I want every race to be this way, but this really showcased some of the strengths of NASCAR, as well as some of the strengths of its personalities. But Fox Sports really needs to work on a lot of its issues here. The audio problems were, in my opinion, inexcusable for the fact that you have this company who is really in its hometown where it's based at, and they can't get a good enough audio system to have people announced at the right time, to get the concerts to play correctly, whether that be with Ice Cube or Pitbull. That stuff, in my opinion, when it comes to bringing in new fans, just shows, to them at least, a high level of unprofessional showings. But there was one big shining light in all of the mediocrity of Fox's broadcast, and that was Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart was the right mix of hilarious and informative. Stewart has a very great sense of humor that he probably had to tone down a little bit to be on a national television type of audience. But the thing is like I said, he was very informative in the fact that he would use a lot of these jokes to kind of lead into teaching us at home what he's talking about or what the drivers are dealing with. As for the concerts itself, having Pitbull beforehand was pretty fun. I could tell that the stadium was really getting into it. And then having Ice Cube at the halftime show, which in general I'm not a fan of, but this race is different, so it's fine, I think was really, really well done. And when you could tell that the crowd had a complete culture shock with it, Ice Cube was a great professional, one of the greatest performers, I think, in all of music, managed to still make it an awesome show for us watching on TV. Anything but the normal country artists that we so often see. We need to just keep doing this to make it better. But that kind of leads into the big question that a lot of people have, or at least one of the big ones. Where does the Clash go after 2022? Now, there are 2 options. One is it could be another city. I don't think they're going to go straight back to Daytona after this because, let's be real, about 50,000 people showed up of the 60,000 possible. And for a modern day NASCAR race, especially a non-points race, that is impressive. What I think is that they're going to be back in LA. And I think that what they need to do is continue to use what worked, stuff that people are saying, great racing, great performers, great atmosphere. They just need to make the broadcast better. If the broadcast was at a higher level, I think a lot more people would not be on the fence, but instead would be supporting what we saw. Now, how do we judge this race as a success? Because yes, if the racing is good, if the crowd was great, that's all great and all. But how is this race going to last the test of time? How is this going to be something that lasts longer than just 2024? Well, that right there will be all up to how the ratings pan out. I know a lot of diehards don't care about the ratings, but in reality, it's what drives everything you see on TV, the stuff you like, the stuff you don't like, and the stuff that you don't know you want or don't want yet. And if the ratings are up for this race, you're going to see a whole lot more of this, whether it be for the All-Star race, for a Cup race, or maybe at a just slightly larger track, like a 3rd-mile track, maybe a points race. But if the ratings are down, well, NASCAR's just going to try something different. They're not going to go back to something that fails if this ends up failing this year, and if they try it again next year if it fails again. So keep an eye out for the ratings in the coming week, maybe week and a half. That will tell you a lot about whether or not NASCAR is going to go forward with this kind of thing again, or if this is just a flash in the pan. Now, I want to pass this all on to you right now. There's so much to unpack from this race, and I think that one person like me in a video is not going to do it justice. We need a community to really feed into this. So I want you to let me know down in the comments below. What did you think about the first clash in the Coliseum? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you indifferent? Or are you just somewhere else on that spectrum? Let me know down below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Also, be sure to watch Black Flags Matters channel this Wednesday night. We're having the NASCAR Weekly Podcast, and we're going to talk all about this race even more. And maybe we'll bring up some of your guys' points too. And also to all of my channel members, thank you so much for your support. So until next time, have a good one.